Welcome back. In today's special, we are discussing long-term implications of advertising controversies on brands and what internal processes should brands review to prevent future controversies. This was in bad taste. The Prachi Nigam ad was in bad taste. But something is to generate, pick on the public interest, like the India-Pakistan match and, Make My Trip offering free stays for Pakistani fans was one of the campaign around the India-Pakistan match. That was, to trigger conversations, to get in more engagement. But again, that backfired and that was considered in bad taste. So, where to draw the line? As Anupama mentioned, that brands will be scared taking that step, whether to release or not to release. So, where is the creative freedom? Where is the liberty, Manisha?
So, according to me, actually, so one is you're talking of moment marketing. I think the other place where people or ads sometimes get into controversy, which a lot of people have been talking about, is when you're trying to push a conversation, right? When you're trying, and advertising, I think for a very long time has also managed to push culture. It is not just a reflection of culture, right? And I think that there's a huge positive way in which that needs to be done. But again, I think if it is done in an ad hoc way, I think what happens is then the company also does not actually understand that cause or that issue, and then may make statements that they can't eventually stand behind. But if you have done your homework, if let's say you pick up a cause, and I think that's the other way in which a lot of brands try to work around, is that you pick up a cause, but then that cause cannot just be a creative strategy, it has to be a bigger brand strategy, right? I mean, then are you investing with, let's say, the community that you're talking about? Do you understand them well? Have you included their views in the creative that you're making, or is it your gaze on that community versus is it their own way in which they see themselves? So I think if you have done that fundamental homework, and then even if there is some pushback, I think the brand would have the courage to stand behind it, because I think then they really believe in it.
I can give an example on this, I mean, something that I have not created, but share the load. It's a fantastic body of work done for over 15 years now. I don't know how long it's been. And if you want to do cause and if you want to do something, you better have a role in it. And I think they're a very strong role. And I remember on a global, people didn't understand what is laundry and why should men be doing laundry in India. And it's a huge culture understanding. And kudos to the team, whoever's worked on it for over the years. It never seems to me from an outside perspective, and I'm not part of it, and I appreciate what they do, that at no point it feels pushing in the wrong direction. And it's always been, it's for betterment. I think it's for good. So it's I think I was saying conversation. That's a conversation starter. If you ask me at home, why not? Why can't? And it never been told from a negative lens. It's a very, very beautiful, balanced body of work. And again, Josie and team and whoever's on it, great credit to them because it looks and feels real. It's a conversation at home. It starts a conversation. If someone is doing it, it's a good conversation. Someone not doing it, it's a conversation to think about.
Yeah, but what are the long-term implications of any of these backlashes or controversies, Dheeraj, on the brand? Or are there any?
I think...
Do they come and go and like a tide these days?
I mean, no, there will be long-term implication. I think we need a slightly tweak of the mental model on how we are thinking brands of late, right? I mean, if you look at the last decade and the whole proliferation of brand purpose as an idea, and purpose is fantastic, right? But at a lot of places, we've taken social purpose to a wrong end, right? I mean, if you are representing a category which has no business solving that social purpose, that's where there's a mismatch. And that's where opportunism kind of smells, right? So, I mean, for example, the work we did on say Whisper, on saying keep girls in school and get the chapter on menstruation back to schools. That's I would say it's social action rather than social purpose. So the mental model, if brands begin to move to social action, to say this is aligned to my category, this is aligned to the line of consumption or what I sell, right? And here is social action that my brand does, which is close to the behavior. The second mental model, I would say it's a 2x2 scale, right? What is the size of lapse that you've done and what is the scale of outrage, right? If the size of lapse is small and the scale of outrage is one cohort, you have, right, whatever, 10,000 social media issues, that's fine, because in today's times, anything will polarize stuff. Even the Nike's current campaign on, so what if I am doing this, am I bad, right? I mean, it's got polarized reactions, right? But if the size of lapse is momentous and the outrage is nationwide, you obviously need to scale back and do corrective.
Yeah. And what is the way to recovery, Narayan?
Have some principles, stand by them, grow a thick skin, and in the long run, things work out. I keep going back to this example of, we all remember Thomas Alva Edison as one of the greatest inventors of all time. But we forget that he's also the person who invented the electric chair. Nobody talks about that, right? I mean, he has probably contributed to the execution of more human beings on this planet than anybody else. But we remember him as the person who invented the light bulb. And every time we have a great idea, we probably think of him.
Do you have any examples, Anupama, of brands recovering from a situation like this and, emerging with a positive change in the overall outlook?
See, in the recent past, I would say Tanishq is one of them, right? See, they didn't do anything wrong, if you ask me. However, they were quick to apologize. They understood that there's a lot happening to their own employees and they had to take care of them. So immediately putting an apology out there, saying that if the intent was never to hurt anybody's sentiment. And look at Tanishq, it's gone back to wherever it is. It's perfectly fine. It's again talking about religions, festivals, and it's a part of our culture.
Manisha, over to you. From an ASCII lens, from an ASCII perspective, how do you respond to, I'm sure you must be getting a lot of complaints about, ads that didn't go down well with a lot of, consumer cohorts or sections of consumers. So how do you respond to those? Like, how do you look at it?
Yeah, so
some are totally frivolous, like the Bindi example. For example, Vigilante, which was an HDFC Bank campaign. She had a Bindi with stop sign on it. Many people thought it was very uncultural of the brand to have like a stop on women's Bindi, and the Nali silk ad didn't have women wearing a Bindi. So how do you weigh in, some of these complaints that you get?
Yeah, it's very interesting because, we do get all sorts of complaints and people do take offense to a lot of things today. In fact, a couple of years back, we released a report on what does India take offense to, and that had 6 or 7 examples, including whether people were having non-vegetarian, were you showing non-vegetarian food when, during lunch hours. There were a lot of ads that men were taking very serious offense to any time that, let's say, progressiveness was shown in women. So there is, all of that. I think from an ASCII process point of view, I think what really helps us is that we have not one person deciding whether it's okay or not, because, everyone will have a different view. So because we have a jury and that jury actually has a lot of diversity in it, we are able to kind of debate and discuss whether this crosses a particular line or not. And I think in most cases, I would say that these controversies don't contravene the ASCII code, but it is something that you may wish to take care of as a brand, and what is the relationship that you have with your consumers, and does that infringe upon that may dictate your answers more than whether it violates the ASCII code or not. So, I mean, if it violates an ASCII code, of course, we will kind of uphold it, but those tend to be some of the more extreme examples or where there is clearly, a challenge or something that, what we kind of look at is the offense grave and is it widespread? So just because it's widespread does not necessarily mean it's a very serious offense. And if it could be very serious to a few people, but not widespread. So I think those are some of the ways in which we evaluate, but yes, it is a subjective evaluation at the end of the day. But because we have a jury which represents not just the industry, but also civil society, I think there is a good deliberation on some of these. But like I said, I think in most cases, they don't actually contravene the ASCII code.
So final thought, people are going and increasingly becoming more vocal on these platforms. They have a voice, they have an opinion that they share. So then how do you go, how do you go about, doing business, doing advertising going forward? Narayan, let's start with you. What is your biggest takeaway and learning from, the incidents of the past couple of years?
I go back maybe 30 years, 35 years back to the ad when Milind Soman and Madhu Sapre wore nothing but a python around them. And back then, I think the worst that we were accused of in advertising was stretching the limits of morality.
And
the
vulgarity.
problem now is that everything, Well, yeah, probably part of the moral code as well back then. But now everything is seen through an ideological lens, not a moral lens, and that complicates things. And that's the cultural shift that Dheeraj spoke about at the beginning as well. But maybe the other thing that we can take some solace from is that while there are the fringes, while there are the extremes, for the most part, people are sensible. And if we can respect that and continue to push that, we'll be okay. As someone said, and I can't use the words that were said in Hindi over here, but the rough translation in English is that I may be a devotee, but I'm not an idiot. I'll leave you to translate that into Hindi and talk, figure out what they were trying to say. So people are not idiots, and I think if we respect their intelligence and if we show that we're sparking debate that pushes all of us forward, we'll be okay.
Dheeraj?
I think finally it's a judgment call, right? I think no amount of consumer work will tell you, because outrage is a mob thing, right? In a focus group of 4 people, people may say, yeah, this is okay. Chances are a lot of the work which went through controversy was actually consumer tested, right? And still they went ahead and did it, because there's a work from Nike which has gone through outrage and so on and so forth, right? And HDFC Bank and so on and so forth. And even in a room, you make 12 people sit, they'll have different opinions on the same pieces of work which have gone through outrage. I think outrage has a typical social behavior of mob mentality, right? Like something happens on the road and 20 people are beating somebody down and 30 other people will join and beat them down. So it becomes a mob thing. And you don't know what will get into the mob outrage setup. So I think the best, and at best case, it's a judgment.
Manisha, final thoughts?
See, advertising is not art right now. I mean, it serves a purpose. It serves its brand, and therefore I think keeping that sensitivity in mind. But then I keep pushing. I always say that the answer is more creativity, because so much of it's not really what you say, but how you say it, and who better than creative storytellers to kind of really bring out the nuances in a way that is that is loved, in a way that is that people can relate with. So to me, I think the answer to a lot of problems that advertising has is actually, can we be more creative?
Great thought. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Anupama and Narayan. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
With that, it's a wrap on Storyboard this week. Goodbye.